So the funny part is they said everybody's angel was white, but of course Peter's angel was black. Hi, I'm Taylor Ricks, and I'm so excited to share with you my new series that we're going to be doing for Come Follow Me. So the idea behind it is we're going to talk about members of the church in early church history who were African American and their stories. I think throughout the year we're going to hear a lot of stories about a lot of pioneers and all that they contributed to the building of the kingdom. And so I thought we'll focus once a week. We'll share a story about one of our early African American or black ancestors that are a part of the church. And while we do it, we're gonna mix up a fun treat or meal so that we can just feel like we're friends hanging out in the kitchen, just talking and enjoying one another's company. So I am so excited that you're gonna join me, and let's go ahead and get started. This week, for the very first week, and Doctrine and Covenants section 1, we're going to talk about Peter. So Peter was born, we think, in 1775. Oh, and we're also going to make French toast casserole. Okay, so Peter was born in what we think to be 1775. We don't have the exact birth date of when he was born, but we know that his mom's name was Kino. And when he was about 7 years old, that's when we have the first legal record of Peter, and we learned that he was a slave to John Kerr Jr., and they lived in Fallowfield Township, Pennsylvania. So John Kerr Jr., he was like a metal worker. He owned like a metal shop from what we know. So we understand that Peter was probably like a blacksmith or a farmhand and helped John out in that capacity as his slave. So unfortunately for Peter, he was born 4 or 5 years too late for the Pennsylvania early emancipation laws, because they have gradual emancipation laws at the time. And so because of that, he just barely missed the deadline by 4 or 5 years. So he had to remain a slave. Because of that, as John Kerr Jr. aged, he willed Peter to his son Moses, and Moses was married to a woman named Mary Carell. So Peter was now their property, and Mary and Moses decided to pass Peter on to Mary's dad, whose name was Thomas. So first he was owned by John, then he was owned by Moses, and now he's owned by Thomas Carell. So he worked for Thomas Carell as his slave until he was about 25 years old, so quite a long time. And at that point, in 1813, so another 13 more years or so, the Carells and the Kerrs moved to northeastern Ohio, which I found to be very interesting because in northeastern Ohio, they moved into Geauga County, Ohio. That area actually decided that slavery was illegal. So even though they were slave owners, obviously they owned Peter, they chose to move to an area that denounced slavery, which meant that Peter was now free from slavery and he was no longer anyone's property. So he moved in with a family, John and Jemima Doan, and began working various jobs. So the people in the area started to call him by the nickname of Blackfeet. So at first, when you hear about a nickname, it can sound so great, like they welcomed him in, that is so nice, so friendly, but not in this circumstance, because unfortunately, back when men were, or women were freed from slavery, they would put black in front of their name to denote that they were former slaves or even current slaves sometimes. And then Christians would not allow them to use a Christian name, like a full proper Christian name, like the name of Peter. So they would shorten it to Pete. So it really wasn't as dear as a nickname normally sounds. It it was actually kind of a disrespectful thing. And then others would call him Peter Kerr, which is the last name of his owner, John Kerr Jr. And I just don't think it's appropriate to call him by a yucky nickname or by the name of his owner. So I just like to call him Peter, but if you want to go study more about him, most of the record books have him written down as Black Pete. So that's what you would find. So that's what they called him in his new home in New Orleans is Black Pete. So while he was there, he began working on the Newell K. Whitney farm in around 1830. So he was like 55 years old at the time. And also at the same time, missionaries came into the area. And you'll never guess what missionaries came. It was Parley B. Pratt, Peter Whitmer, and Oliver Cowdery. So like a really stellar group of missionaries came and started teaching the gospel. So around 1831, let's see, February 5th, 1831, the Apostolic Journal published that Peter was a member of the church and that he was spending time with the Mormons. And they published that in that article. But the thing is the church doesn't have any record of whether or not Peter was baptized. So the truth is we really just don't know. We're not sure if he was baptized or not. But we do have a story that Peter is super famous for. So at the time, there was a story going around that men in the town were having angels come visit them and deliver letters to them. And in the letters, there would be their mission calls. And they would have to hurry and write down everything that the letter said before it just magically disappeared. So what Peter is known for is one time he just fell or flew right off a 20-foot embankment, 25-foot embankment. So some people say he was just like not paying attention and fell off, but other people say that he was trying to reach his letter from his angel. Funny part is they said everybody's angel was white, but of course Peter's angel was black. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't heard many stories about angels working for the post office, but who am I to judge? Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe they did. I don't know. We don't really have any record. The church doesn't really say like, yeah, that totally happened or no, it didn't. So I guess we might have to just wait until we meet Peter in the next life. Either way, it is reported that from there, Peter decided he was gonna be a mission in the New Orleans area and started teaching people all around the area. So they claim that that's what he did for the rest of his life. But ever since that newspaper article, there's really no more written record of him, and everyone believes that he died around 65 years of age. So throughout that time, when Peter was apparently first baptized, we don't have church record of it, but if he was, it is said that he asked Joseph Smith for permission to marry multiple sisters, but was not given the permission to marry them. So from what we know, Peter was probably single his entire life and never got married, and then died again, like I said, at the age of 65. But many historians believe that he is the first African-American member of the church, which is pretty cool. The other thing that is interesting is Doctrine and Covenants Section 1 was written in the year 1830. So when you're reading it, you can remember this story of Peter, and you can think about how that happened at the exact same time that Section 1 was written. I'm gonna get this baked and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Thank you so much for coming to the first episode of Mix It Up, Black History and the Restoration. I can't wait to hear your thoughts and comments. Thanks.